So, you've got this incredible story rattling around in your head, right? Maybe you've been dreaming of it for years. But then you sit down to actually write it, and nothing. You freeze. Well, in this explainer, we are going to break down that whole process into a clear, practical plan to finally get that story out of your head and onto the page. Let's get into it.
Oh man, we all know this feeling, don't we? That little vertical line, just blinking and blinking, and it almost feels like it's mocking you from that totally empty page. It can feel like you're staring at this giant wall. But what if I told you the way to get past it is actually simpler and a whole lot more forgiving than you probably think?
And listen, this isn't just some cheesy motivational poster quote. This right here, this is probably the single most freeing idea you can grab onto as a writer. Seriously, it's the key that unlocks everything else. It's not about being a genius from the very first word. It's just about giving yourself permission.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to kick things off with that idea of permission. Then we'll completely dismantle this myth of writer's block. After that, we'll get our hands dirty with the practical stuff, building your story's foundation. We'll establish a super powerful daily habit, and we'll finish up with the one thing that truly separates writers from dreamers.
Okay, first things first. We have got to tackle the biggest hurdle that stops most people before they even get started. This intense pressure to be brilliant right out of the gate.
And this is what permission to write badly really truly means. It means you are allowed to write clunky sentences. You're allowed to use cliches and to write a scene that goes absolutely nowhere. And why? Because once the words are on the page, they can be fixed. They can be rearranged, rewritten, or just flat out deleted. But a blank page gives you nothing to work with.
You know, this whole idea of permission leads directly to our next topic, the so-called writer's block. Once you start to embrace imperfection, you can see this block for what it really is. Just think about that for a second. Have you ever heard of plumber's block? Or maybe accountant's block? No, right? People in other jobs push through resistance every single day. And look, a lot of experienced authors will tell you that writing is no different. Writer's block isn't some kind of mystical disease, it's just a label we stick on the work when it starts to feel difficult.
So if we stop calling it writer's block, we can actually start to see the real, manageable challenges that are hiding behind that label. Things like the fear of not being good enough, the constant pull of distractions, or the paralysis that comes with perfectionism. See? Once you name the actual problem, you can actually solve it.
So let's talk about that first one, fear. You know, the fear that your idea isn't original enough, or that nobody will care what you have to say. Instead of letting that paralyze you, you got to reframe it. That feeling of fear doesn't mean you should stop. It is absolute proof that you care deeply about what you're creating. That anxiety isn't weakness, it's fuel. Okay, so here's the trick with perfectionism. You don't try to get rid of it, no way. You just use it at the right time. See, your first draft has one job, and one job only, to exist. That's it. That's when you have to cage your inner critic, turn them off, and just get the story down on the page. Then, later, when it's editing time, you can let that perfectionist out. Let them be as ruthless as they want. You just have to separate the two jobs, creator and critic, never both at the same time.
All right, with our mindset totally shifted, it's time to get practical. A great novel needs a strong foundation. And believe it or not, it all starts with one super simple question. I'm serious, why this story? Is it to explore a specific theme that you're passionate about? Is it to prove to yourself that you can do it? Whatever your reason is, I want you to write it down. Put it on a sticky note and stick it on your monitor. Because when you're deep in the messy middle of your novel and you feel totally lost, that why is the anchor that's going to keep you going.
Now, let's talk about the idea itself. Look, not every concept can hold up for a 100,000-word story. You need something with real depth, real conflict. A great rule of thumb is to pick the idea that doesn't just excite you, but also scares you a little bit. That fear, that's often a sign that you've hit on something with super high stakes and real emotional weight. Before you even think about typing chapter 1, you need to know your main character inside and out. What do they want more than anything in the world? What are they absolutely terrified of? But here's the most important question of all. What happens if they fail? The answer to that single question defines the stakes of your entire story. Because if failure has no real consequences, the reader has no reason to care. So, with that foundation in place, now you can tackle the opening. The first few pages are absolutely critical. Your goal here is to create curiosity. Don't start with the weather, start with a weird question or some kind of unexplained action.
Introduce a character we actually want to follow, someone who is interesting, not necessarily likable. Hint at those high stakes you just defined, and finally, set the overall tone of the story. You don't have to explain everything, you just have to hook the reader.
And now, we've arrived at the single most important part of this entire process. This is it. This is the simple, totally unglamorous habit that separates people who finish books from those who just talk about them.
That's it. The whole formula is just to write 1 page a day. That's about 250 words. I know, it's so small it almost feels insignificant, but it's power. Its power is in its consistency.
Some days, that page is going to be easy. But let's be real, most days, it's going to be hard. Some pages will feel brilliant, others will feel like complete garbage. And you know what? It absolutely does not matter. What matters is the act of showing up and doing the work. You write the page, you close the laptop, you do it again tomorrow. That, my friends, is how novels get built.
And that brings us to our final and most crucial point. We've talked about mindset, we've talked about story foundations, and we've talked about habits. But all of it, every single bit, comes down to one thing.
I really want you to let this sink in. A flawed, messy, finished first draft is infinitely more valuable than a perfect, brilliant idea that only lives in your head. You can always improve something that's written. You can't improve something that isn't there.
So, the path forward is crystal clear. Give yourself permission to be imperfect. Build your character and your world. Show up and write 1 page. Everything you need is right here in front of you. The only difference between a dreamer and a writer is action. So the only question left is, what will you write today?